Big game, obviously, on Sunday against the New England Patriots. And, we've said the season is over from a playoff perspective. We're allowed to say that as fans. And as I've said several times, the players aren't allowed to say that. And the coaches aren't allowed to say that either. And they better be competing and playing like their playoff lives are on the line, which they are. Right? You got to win out if you want to get in, which, I can't even say that with a straight face with this team and this defense. The prospect of winning out and it starting against the team that I have at number one in the NFL for several weeks now. Hard to wrap your head around. But there's a real world where Joe Burrow plays quarterback for this team on Sunday, which is absolutely unbelievable. I've been checking, the phone, waiting for an update of somebody saying, yep, he's going to play for sure. It's trending in that direction. He's taking the first team reps. He's not a limited participant. He's a full participant. Joe Flacco's been a limited participant. All signs are pointing towards him playing. So I'm just going to operate under the assumption that he is playing. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if he wasn't, right? I've said on this thing, I'm very much 50-50. Now, in the public eye, in the national eye, it doesn't seem or sound like 50-50 here at this point. In my head, it is, just because, what the timeline was with the injury, where you're at as a team, and the fact that nobody has, commented on, we intend on him playing. But I think in a perfect world, they would have liked to wait till Thanksgiving. And maybe they would have if they had one more win. But, again, you have to win out if you want to get in, right? 9-8, I don't think is cutting it. I really don't. And you've went 9-8 the past 2 years, and obviously it wasn't enough. So, maybe if they would have won one of the Jets or the Bear game or, Lion or just one of these games that they would have won, maybe it's different. They hold them off for Thursday. But if your intent is to make the playoffs, which it has to be if you're the players and the coaches, you got to go now with Joe Burrow. And it's interesting because you remember when Lamar was banged up earlier in the year, Craig pointed this out, when you have a game on Sunday and then you transition into a short week, maybe you got to hold him off on the Sunday game and then he'll roll out there on Thursday and he'll play. Bengals, of course, play on Thanksgiving night. It's kind of interesting, right? Again, if you were in a spot where you weren't in win-out mode and there was some room for error, maybe you make that call, but you're not. You got to run the table here, and it all starts at home against New England. And, obviously you want to protect the player, right? But if the doctors clear him and say he's good to go, clearly Joe Burrow wants to go, right? I mean, there was a report from Jeremy Rao, Fox 19. T asked him, and Joe just kind of gave him a look, right? Like, clearly he wants to go out there and he wants to play. And I would say clearly he feels like he is able to play. I kind of thought that we would know by now, right? A game time decision thing doesn't really make much sense to me, right? From a guy coming off of surgery, again, like if it's an ankle injury and you're a week to week, then maybe it's game time decision. This doesn't seem like a game time decision type of move, especially if a guy's practicing in full. Zach Taylor doesn't really operate that way, but maybe we're not going to know until a couple minutes before game time or when he runs out there with his pads on, right? So we'll see. Again, at this point, I expect him to play. And then it comes, okay, well, how do you go out there and win the game? It'll be awesome to see him run out there, assuming he does. There will be a spark. There will be a juice. There will be a newfound life, a newfound energy. But then it will become time to play football. Right? And, a lot of your issues that you have are still going to be issues for you. Joe Burrow coming back to play quarterback isn't going to solve all your problems on defense. We all understand that. But we'll start with the offensive side of this game because it's very interesting to figure out how this game is going to play out, right? Because Joe Flacco obviously has done some stuff under center, which I think a lot of us like, right? Open up the play action game. We've never seen play action from under center with Joe Burrow. What do you do? Do you do that, right? I mean, you saw him kind of getting some work in with Ted Karras. Again, maybe he typically always does that, but he's rarely under center. I personally think it would be a good thing to have Joe Burrow under center. Craig mentioned that he thinks that it could work in a negative way towards Chase Brown. I got to push back on that a little bit. I think if Joe Burrow had been playing this year, Chase Brown would be going crazy. Right, but that's not the case, right? Because you have to be so worried about the receivers and Joe Burrow making a play down the field. There would be so many opportunities to dump it off to Chase Brown, and he's got great speed, and he'd be able to run. I think Chase Brown in the passing game, if Joe Burrow had been healthy all year, would be something that was a huge threat for the Cincinnati Bengals, and we'll see if that can become the case here. Again, I would like to see some under center stuff. Not just, Burrow's back 5 wide, we're chucking it around. Yeah, it's fun, but it's not, conducive to protecting your quarterback, right, and protecting your offensive line for that matter as well. We've talked about this a lot with offensive line play. The offensive line seemingly has gotten a little bit better from the eye test. Well, the plays that are being called and the threat of a run game, that helps out the offensive line. It's very difficult when you line up 5 wide and you go, okay, they're not throwing the ball. They're not running the ball. They're definitely throwing the ball. It's a lot harder as an offensive line. It's just not sustainable to be able to do that. And, it's asking a lot of them, and it's putting the quarterback in a tough spot. So I would like to see some more under center stuff. I think we all would. But this has an opportunity to be a huge T. Higgins game. And that is very exciting. The thumbnail on this video, it's the perfect picture, right? Burrow and Higgins from after the Denver game last year. I see T going crazy in this game, regardless of who's out there playing quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. T. Higgins I'm telling you, he is a top 12 to 15 wide receiver in this league. He is a 1 for many other teams. Most of the time you have the too high stuff with, safeties running that too high look against the Bengals because you got to protect against Chase and Higgins. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. Obviously, he's going to get double a lot in this game. I understand that, but they're going to understand the importance of getting him the football. And, if Joe Burrow's back, they're going to take some shots down the field to T where he can high point the ball, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think T's going to have a big game, right? This feels like a huge T. Higgins game, regardless of who's out there playing quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. The matchup with Gonzalez is going to be fascinating. We'll see, how often it's Gonzalez, how often it's Carlton Davis. If they just have Gonzalez follow T around, that will be fascinating to watch. Gonzalez is one of the best corners in the league, right? But I just got done praising T. Higgins. That's good on good. That's great on great. And that's going to be a fascinating matchup to watch in this game. I think Surtain's clearly the best corner in the league. And a guy like Stingley, of course, for the Texans is a really, really good player there as well. But, Gonzalez, he kind of belongs in that conversation. He's a really, really good player. And then the question is, someone else needs to step up, right? If Gesicki can come back too, that's awesome, right? I think the world of Mike Gesicki. I was pounding the table saying Bengals need to bring back Mike Gesicki. They did. Well, then Burrow gets hurt, and then he gets hurt, and it just really hasn't been able to get going. But don't forget about the 2024 Mike Gesicki from last year. That was unbelievable. If he comes back, that's huge, right? There's your 2 right there if Gesicki's back. Higgins and Gesicki, heck yeah, you can win with those 2 guys. And then what else do you do at the receiver spot, right? Again, talked about, Chase Brown getting unlocked. Well, how does that look for Yoshi? Right? Because Yoshi, with Joe Burrow out there, we all love. We all love that version of Yoshi when Joe Burrow's out there. When he's not out there, we don't necessarily love that version of Yoshi. He was great in the first quarter against Pittsburgh and then was pretty much silent throughout the remainder of the game. But Yoshi and Burrow, that's a connection to look out for, right? I saw it a little bit in San Francisco with Kittle. Kittle's obviously tremendous, but clearly he's better with Purdy than Mac Jones, and that's very clear. Similar situation here, potentially, with Yoshi to be unlocked a little bit more. And the Bengals staff clearly trusts him. People are saying, get him off the field, get him off the field. They stuck with him, and they continued to put him out on the football field. And, he was able to produce against Pittsburgh. And then the question beyond that, right, is Jermaine Burton finally going to be active? Who knows, right? That was 3rd-round pick. Traits are there. Mindset clearly not there. Will he get an opportunity? I don't know. It kind of feels like no, to be honest with you, despite the fact the Bengals need him. Mitchell Tinsley, of course, a guy that's going to get some looks there as well. And I would like to see Charlie Jones have an opportunity. He's a 4th-round pick. You would like to see a little bit more than just return specialist for him. And, look, if I've joked about, Charlie Jones kind of running out to the 25 and just getting shellacked. But if you continue to have years where you run back a kick for a touchdown, you're going to continue to have that opportunity. And he ran another one back this year. So I think he'll probably be the guy at that spot for a couple of more years. But I also think there's some stuff he can do from a receiver perspective. We'll see if he gets an opportunity in the game as well. So if Burrow's back, obviously the offense is going to be fun. We're all going to have our eyes on it. And you just hope that he's able to look like November Joe Burrow, right, and not September Joe Burrow, because there is a big difference. And there's enough data out there to say that, yeah, Joe Burrow, the first couple of games, isn't the same guy. That's just kind of how it is. It's how I expect it to be next year, regardless of, the health in which he has throughout the offseason. But hopefully he can show up ready to go and he looks like Joe Burrow. Because if he does, there's always a chance. Always a chance if number 9's out there. And we'll see if ultimately that happens. Now, the not-so-fun part of this conversation, the defense, right? This is a really good New England offense. Drake Maye, right? Great player. Obviously, Vrabel's done a tremendous job. Probably coach of the year if they continue to win. Certainly if they get the 1 seed. I think Shanahan deserves a ton of credit for what he's able to do. He probably would get my vote right now, but Vrabel, what he's done is tremendous if they get the 1 seed, obviously. You got to give it to him. But Drake Maye, I think very highly of him. I've been up front. I've had the Patriots at 1 of my power rankings for several weeks. Doesn't mean they're unbeatable. I think there's very much a world where Cincinnati can win this game, especially with Joe Burrow playing quarterback, assuming that he does. TreVeyon Henderson is the guy where it's like, that seems like the type of guy that's going to absolutely smoke the Bengals defense because he's faster than everybody the Bengals have, and he runs with some violence despite not being the biggest guy there in the world. And I could see him just lowering his shoulder and blasting Geno Stone in this game if Geno Stone, of course, is going to be out there. Stefon Diggs, we've talked about this a lot when we've talked about the Patriots. Say what you want about him, right? He's drama queen, selfish, certainly at times, some questionable decisions off the field, but when he was with Josh Allen, it was like, this dude's a real dude. Same thing in Minnesota. And then he had kind of been quiet the recent years as far as his production. And then New England said, no, we want to go out there and pay him. And a lot of people were like, wait, what are you doing paying him? It's worked out. Stefon Diggs has been tremendous. We'll see, assuming Turner gets matched up with him. Juan Drago, as Reed likes to say. And we'll see what that matchup looks like. But Stefon Diggs has been brilliant for them. Hunter Henry, right? That's a guy. Who are you going to put on him? Tight ends obviously always abuse the Cincinnati Bengals. A young quarterback, their security blanket. Yep, it's the tight end. Hunter Henry's going to be an issue in this game. And if he's matched up with Barrett Carter, you don't feel pretty good if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. But one thing I will say is you saw defensive improvement against Pittsburgh. If you didn't watch the game or you didn't pay attention to the game, you look at the score and say, 30-plus points. What are you talking about? 2 touchdowns scored on defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you did a nice job stringing together some 3-and-outs, right? You're forcing some punts against Pittsburgh in the first half, and your offense wasn't able to capitalize. Well, if you string together some 3-and-outs or some punts in the first half and Joe Burrow's playing, you're going to score some points. You're absolutely going to score some points. Now, the defense in the second half, there was really only 2 possessions. They were long possessions. They gave up 3rd and a mile several times. Certainly not good. So they kind of reverted back to old habits there in that degree. But that first half performance you got against Pittsburgh, you'll take that. You'll absolutely take that in this game if you're the Bengals. And obviously you got to find a way to force turnover, right? If you don't force any turnovers on defense, probably not going to win. You could say that most weeks, but when you're a bad team, you really need to say that, right? The only reason you won the Pittsburgh game on Thursday night was because you forced some turnovers, despite the fact that Joe Flacco was unbelievable in that football game. You forced some turnovers, and that ultimately is what helped you win that football game. And you got to get back to doing that. It's been 3 games, 3 consecutive games. They haven't forced a turnover defensively. Can't happen. Drake Maye, he makes a lot of good decisions. We've seen him make a couple of bad decisions. The throw in the end zone against Tampa immediately comes to mind late in the game. It's like, what are you doing? That's just a force, right? And I think Drake Maye understands that, I got a chance to go off in this game, right? I got a chance to score 40 points and cement myself as the MVP frontrunner. Might be some bad decisions that come with that. We'll see if the Bengals can capitalize at all in their secondary. But defense is clearly where you have your eye on here, right? The New England offense is really, really good, but it's not, all world, right? It's not the best offense in the National Football League. Better than the Pittsburgh offense, but if you can force some punts, get off the field, get a couple turnovers, you'll have an opportunity to hang in there in this game. And we'll see if there's any personnel changes there. I mean, if they can't tackle and Geno Stone just gets ran over and doesn't provide maximum effort and he is out there for 100% of the snaps, I might lose my mind. But at the same time, I don't think that would surprise any of us there as well.